I apologize for the delay. Maybe if Vaughn Malathon, can you indicate if you can hear now virtually?
Hi, Matt. This is the city attorney, and I can now hear you.
Thank you for that. I apologize for that.
Thank you. So Chair Doe, if I may, just for the record, identify that we have 5 commissioners here. Commissioner Barnes is absent, and we have a vacant 7th seat at this moment. So for the the minutes for when those get recorded, we'll make that note. I think for the sake of the public's benefit, for those that may have been listening after I make my announcements, if we can go back to Mr. Pruder to make the note regarding how to participate. If you're participating remotely, we can focus Mr. Pruder on the remote participants only, just to help there. So with that, I'll jump into reports and announcements. One item, so an update from the City Council meeting last week, just to let the Commission know, as part of the last meeting of the year, the Council does its annual reorganization. So Vice Mayor Taylor is now the city's mayor for 2024, and Commissioner Combs will be the vice mayor for 2024. And then another update, the council also went through and identified council members for advisory boards, ad hoc committees, subcommittees, as well as liaisons to commissions. And so Councilmember Dorr is still the Planning Commission, or the City Council liaison to the Planning Commission for the 2024 calendar year. And then one more announcement. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks about the 7th vacant seat, we do have a vacancy on the Planning Commission. The city clerk is actively recruiting for that position, as well as vacancies on the Library Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission. And so those vacancies close on the 29th of December at 5 p.m. So any interested members of the community should apply and through the city clerk's office by 5 p.m. on December 29th for a potential appointment in January. And that concludes my reports and announcements.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Parada? No questions? Okay, so we'll move to D, public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed in the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda and therefore cannot respond to non-agenda issues other than to provide general information. And I'll turn it back to our clerk. And also, if you could describe how to, thank you, participate remotely.
Thank you. Absolutely, Chair Doe. At this time, we have public comment. And again, anyone in the public here at Council Chambers, please provide a comment card if you wish to speak. For those attending remotely, I apologize for the inconvenience, but to clarify the instructions, if you're on Zoom, you may press the hand icon at this time to indicate your interest in speaking on this item. And if you are calling by phone, you may press *9, and that will indicate that you'd also like to speak. And additionally, if anyone is sharing an account or has additional members of their family or that would wish to speak at this time, please indicate at the beginning of your comment that you have someone else who is joining in the call, and we'll make sure that both of you or whoever the other members are will get an opportunity to speak as well. With that, I currently see no hands raised. Happy to wait a moment if you'd like, Chair Doe. Okay.
How about now? Any hands?
At this time, I still see no hands. So if you'd like, you may close public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and close public comment and move to the consent calendar. There's one item, E1, architectural control for the Sharon Heights Golf and Country Club at 2900 Sand Hill Road. And we'll open public comment for this item for any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item on the consent calendar. So I'll go ahead and turn it back to you, Mr. Pruder.
Thank you, Chair Doe. Again, this is now public comment for the specific item in question on the consent calendar. I don't see any hands raised, but as a reminder, if you're on Zoom, please press the hand icon to indicate you'd like to speak, or *9 as well if you're calling by phone. And provide a comment card in person if you'd like. We can wait a moment longer if you'd prefer. Chair Doe, I still see no hands.
Thank you. We'll give it a moment. Are there any hands now?
There are still no hands. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission if anyone would like to make a motion or pull the item for discussion. Commissioner Riggs.
Yes, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggs, for the first. Would anyone?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Farrick. And if there's no further discussion or questions, we'll go ahead and vote on the consent calendar. Commissioner Eric.
Yes.
Commissioner Farrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Riggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Schindler.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That's 5 yeses and 1 absent, so the motion passes. And that brings us to F, the public hearing. Item F1. Use permit and architectural control for 141 Jefferson Drive and 180 to 186 Constitution Drive. Consider and adopt a resolution to approve revisions to the use permit and architectural control permit for the previously approved Menlo Uptown project consisting of 483 multifamily dwelling units comprised of 441 rental units in 2 7-story buildings, 42 for-sale townhome units, and approximately 2,940 square feet of commercial space. The proposed revisions include changes to the landscaping and design of the publicly accessible paseo through the project site to accommodate temporary emergency vehicle access until the future townhome component is constructed. The applicant is also requesting to modify the approved community amenity and provide an in lieu fee payment instead of the approved urgent care center within the multifamily building fronting Constitution Drive, and to utilize that 2,940 square foot space for commercial uses. The project site is located in the RMUB Residential Mixed Use Bonus Zoning District. Determined that these actions are consistent with the previously certified project level final environmental impact report. And I believe I am looking at Ms. Bagat for any updates or presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission, and members of the community. The project before you this evening is review of the revisions that are being made to the use permit and architectural control permit for the Menlo Uptown project. This project is previously approved by this Commission and the City Council in 2021, and a portion of the project is currently under construction. So a brief overview of the project site. The approximately 4.38 acre project site is located south of the Bayfront Expressway and east of Chrysler Way. As I mentioned, the project is currently under construction. In this diagram, the red block is essentially where the project site is, and the purple dashed line shows where the paseo would be based on the zoning and general plan requirements. This is the existing project that was approved. The project is 483 units with 441 apartment units and 42 for-sale townhomes. The paseo essentially bifurcates the site, and to the left you have the apartments and to the right you have the townhome. Development, the building fronting Constitution also has approximately 2,900 square feet of commercial space on the first floor. As I mentioned previously, both the apartment buildings are currently under construction, and the site that will receive the townhomes is currently vacant. The previous buildings have been demolished, and I believe there is a construction staging area there currently. So the proposal is to revise the paseo with temporary or interim revisions to add an EVA. So the applicant originally anticipated constructing this whole project as one, but since then they have decided not to currently construct the townhomes. As originally designed, the emergency vehicle access or EVA would have been part of the driveway network for garage accesses for the townhomes. But since the townhomes are not going to be constructed, there is a need to create an EVA on the paseo that is separating the apartments and the townhomes. Along with the EVA, there would be other infrastructure like lighting in that area. The EVA that is going to be constructed or is being requested to be constructed is a temporary improvement that is proposed to be removed as soon as the townhome parcel goes into construction. The ultimate development of the paseo, including the landscaping and other improvements, would be similar to what was previously approved by the city. The applicant is only proposing this interim change to be able to support emergency vehicle access for the apartment buildings that are anticipated to be completed by next year. One more point on the paseo. The paseo changes are considered the architectural control permit revision. The applicant is also proposing revisions to the community amenities that was previously approved for this project. The applicant previously was proposing to use the approximately 2,900 square foot commercial space as a nonprofit urgent care center to service the local community. However, we have been told that they are unable to find an organization to operate this use at this time in compliance with the terms of the operating agreement. So the applicant is requesting a use permit revision to pay the fee at 110% value, and it's been calculated as $9.7 million. Staff has conditioned the project that the payment of the fee would be before the issuance of any occupancy permit for any of the buildings. And the commercial space that is currently part of the development would be used by a permitted use that is under the RMU zoning district. Staff is recommending that the commission approve both the use permit and architectural permit revisions subject to conditions that are included in your packet. And this concludes my brief introduction. The applicant team is here and would like to present the project as well. But I'm available to answer any questions as we review the application, and I thank you for your time.
No.
Glad I asked. Can everyone hear me now? Great. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Tyler Evie, and I'm here with Greystar. Thanks for hearing our item on this tonight, the last commission hearing of 2023. Staff did a great job of presenting an overview and the reasons behind our request tonight. So we're going to keep our remarks pretty short and just add in a little color commentary here and there. We had prepared some slides ahead of time. A lot of them are repetitive with what staff has presented, so we won't go over too much. Want to make ourselves available for questions and clarifying thoughts you may have. As was introduced earlier, this project is an active construction site. There's 440 apartments that are under construction right now. In order to deliver the first building of that project, it is necessary to get fire access that's approved by the fire department, which is originally going to be provided by the townhome parcel. As everyone knows, the macro environment for interest rates and the for-sale market has impacted the ability for that portion of the project to start, which necessitated a temporary redesign of the emergency vehicle access for the multifamily portion. So just again, to summarize the request, there is the landscaping treatment changes to the paseo, and then there is the community amenity, really a change in the method of compliance to the community amenity requirement. When the project was originally entitled, there was a user that was identified and who was in mind when the city and Greystar entered into an operating covenant, recorded it on title. There's very specific timing considerations in that document by which the space needed to be delivered, occupied. When we were informed that the user was not going to be able to take occupancy of the space, we immediately started a new search. And that search was not able to produce a new user. And we had to reconsider some of the other options. I'll come back to this in a second. I want to make sure I get through some of the other pieces here. But those are the two pieces of the request. Staff did a good job talking about how the design is going to work. I'm just going to add really quickly, the hotspot kind of in question is in the red circle here on your screen, and kind of the back inside corner. There's a fire hydrant there that provides hose access down two different sides of Building B. We have to be able to get a truck down there. That's basically the reason for the request. The area in white, as staff pointed out, is not going to be able to be built, so we are proposing something that is very similar. You can see that the curvature of the EVA road, the turnout with the throat about halfway down, a lot of that matches the exact same line work and the exact same driveways as before. The area is just going to be provided access via a driveway that is a little further left on the page along Constitution. Originally, it was going to be over on the top right of their screen here in this image. Great. Next, we have the community amenity. So originally entitled with 2,900 square feet of community amenity space in the teal shape and the red circle there in the top right of Building A. The operating covenant agreement that we have with the city was drafted with a certain user in mind, which informed us they were not interested in opening a facility at this location, which prompted a lot of work on our side here at Greystar and with staff to really try to find the perfect replacement user. We did review the list of available community amenity uses that was both in place at the time the project was entitled, and that was also amended by City Council. There was an additional list of users that were added. Unfortunately, no users have been identified who were able to take the space under the terms of the already recorded and signed document. With the first delivery of the first building quickly approaching, we decided with staff to pursue an in lieu fee option, and that fee will be, as staff calculated, a little less than $9.8 million, which is 110% of the value of the urgent care center that was originally intended for the space. I guess another bit of background that's probably helpful. The in lieu fee payment option that we are now asking and putting before you tonight was not available at the time the project was originally entitled. That option had not been adopted by City Council yet. Last thing that I will add is that the RMU zoning code, RMUB technically for this parcel, has provisions in it for ground floor commercial uses. We do not currently have a user or a tenant in mind for the space, so we will probably have to come back to planning, either the department or the commission itself, depending on if it's a conditional or an administrative use, to put someone in that space when someone comes forward. Two more points here, and then I will cede the floor. The first, excuse me. The first is that we've really appreciated working with staff on this. This was it's not easy to make a pivot like this halfway through construction and more than halfway through construction with the clock ticking on us as we aim to deliver the first 200 units of housing with the affordable housing in it in Building A. We really appreciate their efforts doing that. It was a very kind of technical, complex problem to have to solve. There were a lot of documents on file. There were a lot of conditions of approval that created some things for to work through, and we just really appreciated working with them and working through all of that to present the solution to you tonight. And then the second one is that whether it's the landscape changes or the community amenity changes, I think holistically we've tried to present an array of requests to you tonight that is substantially consistent and conforming with a lot of city code. We've really relied on a lot of city code to do this, to try to make the request as it's not very customized. We try to really rely on everything you've already done before. So just please keep that in mind as you're considering tonight. That really concludes our remarks, and we're looking forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Any clarifying questions from the commissioners for staff or the applicant before taking public comment? Commissioner Eric?
Thanks. I think I have a question for staff. So the recommendation from staff on the last page of the presentation was to approve the architectural control permit and the in lieu fee subject to conditions, I think, but I'm not clear what those conditions are. And maybe I did read the staff report, maybe it's obvious there, but I would appreciate a clarification.
Sure. So the conditions that are associated with the project are basically reflective of the architectural control revisions that are being made on the site. So there is a condition of, maintaining the fence that they are proposing to put up to screen the vacant parcel. The fence is wooden as well as chain link. So there are separate conditions of, like, if there is any vandalism, any tear, if something falls down, you are to fix it as quickly as possible. Then there is the vacant site maintenance condition, because the townhome parcel is going to be vacant and we just don't know for how long. There are conditions associated with maintenance of the parcel itself that doesn't collect any debris, doesn't have any fire hazards, so on and so forth. Then there is a condition of doing a raised crosswalk along the north portion of the site, Jefferson, at the intersection of where this Paseo meets Jefferson, for easy access to the Paseo from the street. Of course, the payment of the fee in lieu, or the payment in lieu of the community amenity before we issue any occupancy permit for any building on site. So I think these are the 5 main conditions that come to mind.
Thank you, that's very helpful. That's all for now.
Agree, that was a good clarifying question. Any other clarifying questions before we take public? Commissioner Riggs?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Begat, I wondered if I could ask, did staff review alternative community amenities, alternative to the urgent care? Given that this project is at the north end of the site, or north end of our rezoning, is in the north half. It does seem like there are at least 4 other community amenities that would have been attractive.
We did not review any other community amenity because that was not part of the applicant's proposal. The applicant's proposal included the payment of the fees. The in lieu payment. So that was the option that was evaluated by staff.
I haven't really followed council's priorities. I know here at the Planning Commission, we've worked fairly hard to discourage payment of in lieu fees and to get actual services and spaces provided. Are we not in a position at this point to ask for alternative amenities?
Yes, hi, I'll help answer that. Commissioner Riggs, this is Eric Phillips with the City Attorney's Office. And now that the council has adopted the community amenity in lieu payment program, that provides an objective standard for applicants to rely on. We don't necessarily have a separate objective standard to require them to not pay that fee and instead provide a particular amenity. If there were an amenity that the applicant thought was feasible, that was on the list, we could certainly, we'd be happy to work with them to encourage that. But what the applicant has reported is that the amenity that they explored is no longer feasible and conflicts with their ability to implement the project. So we're looking for ways to support the feasibility of the project here.
I'm sorry, I maybe missed it. Did you say that the applicant indicated that no other amenity would be feasible as part of the project?
I don't know if they've said that no other amenity would be feasible, but I do know that they proposed the amenity payment which complies with the current standards that the council has adopted for us to consider.
All right, I might have a follow-up question later then. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggs. Any other clarifying questions? Commissioner Schindler? Vice Chair Schindler?
Thank you, Chair Doe. Clarifying question to staff. Is there anything about the proposed interim modification to the Paseo, the crosswalk, the fencing, the EVA, that would not be able to be made permanent should, for some reason, the townhouses never be developed?
I'm sorry, it took a minute to think about it. The townhomes are part of the final approval of the site. There is density issues associated. So stepping back, when the original project was approved, the density was distributed across the site. It was all considered as one project. And there are deed restrictions attached with the property right now, or the project site, I should say right now, that kind of governs that. So the townhomes are a piece of this development. Are you asking if somebody came back and changed the townhomes to something else and the improvements would still remain, or that the site would be vacant in perpetuity? Well, I feel like if the site would be vacant in perpetuity, then the improvements would remain. I mean, the way the improvements are being presented to the Paseo, they are not temporary, they're only temporary by design. In other words, they are good improvements. They won't be worn out any more than any other improvements would in a project, but they are proposed to be removed when the townhomes go back. In that sense, they are temporary. So they're not being made with temporary materials is what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you. That addresses the spirit of the question, which is just if the vacancy of the townhomes went on for some very extended period of time, would we need to go through another set of iterations on any of the variables that we're talking about today? And it sounds like the answer is no.
Yes, the answer is no.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Okay, great. And if there's no other clarifying questions, let's go ahead and take public comment on this item.
All right, thank you, Chair Doe. At this time, we have public comment for this particular item, and if any members of the public would like to speak, please press the hand icon on Zoom, or if you're calling by phone, please press *9 on your keypad at this time, and we can allow you to speak on this particular project. I don't see any hands raised at the moment. I do see one. So I'll go ahead and start. We have a commenter named Pam Jones. I'm going to allow that person to speak. And at this time, you'll have 3 minutes, and I'm unmuting you, allowing you to unmute yourself at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Jones, a resident of Menlo Park in District 1. And I have more of comments around observations. First, if you have not recently toured the area that's being developed now on Constitution, Jefferson, and Chrysler, along with where this new project will be, I strongly urge you actually to do so. It gives you a realistic perspective from ground level of what our paseos and walkways are actually going to be. And it's probably going to be the same with this last building. We could ask the fire district to use their drone to give us an overhead. We need a 3-dimensional map. We need something that shows us exactly what it's going to look like, as opposed to having individual exhibits for each one of the projects. The other thing that occurred to me, because it is very, very, very unfortunate that the urgent care center could not be developed. And that's particularly since the people there are going to have difficulty getting in and out, and to have a service like that close by would really make a lot of sense. The other piece is, had all of the developers put all their pennies together and supported Sobrato. Not Sobrato. I forgot their name, but anyway, the underpass that would allow all of the people in the M2 area, including the students, to go under the railroad tracks to get to the new Bellhaven Community Center. It just seems to me we have just put people there that are isolated from any resources. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
My apologies. At this time, I don't see any other hands raised, but we could wait a moment if you'd like, Chair Doe.
Sure, let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional hands now?
I see no additional hands. So if
Okay.
you'd like, you may close at this time. Thank you.
Sure, let's go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further questions, discussion, and ultimately an action is requested of us tonight. Anyone like to start or continue any line of questioning that was? Commissioner Eric?
Thank you, Chair Doe. Continuing on the theme of the in lieu fee, when I read the staff report, I interpreted that there was some disagreement, or at least a question about when the in lieu fee would need to be paid, but I didn't hear anything about that in the presentations from either staff or the applicant. So I'm wondering whether or not we're all agreed now, or whether there is actually something there for us to consider and recommend.
I believe I just heard from the applicant before the meeting started that they're in agreement with staff's recommendation of making the payment before an occupancy permit is issued for any building on site, which is what the condition of approval says. So they're
Okay.
going with staff on this.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have another question, but just to sort of preview at least where my head is at right now, that it does seem unfortunate that the urgent care is not going to be able to be provided on that site. It does also seem to me that as a policy implementing body that we are, the policy of the city council is that an in lieu fee is substantially conformant or is perfectly in line with what is requested of the applicant. So while I hope that we find a way to make community amenities easier to deliver, I'm not inclined to question that part of this at all, given that it is a city council policy. So that's where I'm at. I'll conclude my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric. Vice Chair Schindler.
Thank you, Chair Doe. I have a couple of follow-up questions for the applicant, just seeking to expand our understanding, and also because I think some of the things, the challenges that this project has bumped into, or just some of the things that we're pivoting on, may have relevance to other projects and to other applicants in the future. So I think you mentioned, of course, the macroeconomic things that are going on across the country and across the world. I was seeking to understand whether the delay to townhome construction was driven by concern about interest in purchasing, so the ability to sell the townhomes, or whether it was a factor of interest rates associated with the cost of constructions, or some combination of the two.
Yeah, we can take that. The answer to that is it's a combination of the two. I think what we're hearing from our side of things is that it's a little bit more the first one, where everyone's really concerned that the buyer demand just is not there when the mortgage cost goes from 3 to 8% over the course of 6 to 12 months. We're encouraged though by, as a lot of people are in the industry, encouraged by some of the remarks that have been made by the Fed over the last couple of days. So we're holding our fingers crossed. We remain very committed to the townhomes. We have been advancing plan check there and have been keeping the permits active so that it can be in a shovel-ready state.
Thank you. That's helpful. And again, interesting because it can maybe have applications to other projects that come before this commission and staff. And my other next question is relevant and supportive of some of the things that Commissioner Eric just said. I think this commission is often asked about community amenities, and it would be helpful to understand the couple of things that seemed to prevent the intended urgent care clinic from coming to fruition. And then in conversations with other potential providers, what seemed to be the things that got in the way of, or that were sort of preventing additional providers from stepping into that to provide that service. It's helpful. I'm certainly not indicating that work was not done. It's just very helpful for this commission to understand what the feedback was. It may be applicable to things that come up for us, like on the next agenda item.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think broadly speaking, the decision to present an in lieu fee option to this body was also kind of a unique characteristic of this project, given the fact that it came before this body originally with a user identified, which then decided to not open a facility here. So we were kind of bound by a lot of the documents and the conditions that were assumed at the time. And to find another user to take that place was kind of asking them to really comply with a somewhat narrow set of requirements, especially with regards to timing. The operating covenant that we're subject to requires that nonprofit urgent care center is online in that space 12 months from the first TCO, which would be January 2025, which is an extremely expedited timeline for a user to be able to coordinate with us, with the city, to purchase equipment, to design and engineering, to be able to match that. So I think, broadly speaking, the idea of getting a replacement urgent care provider was going to be difficult if we didn't find one very quickly, and we searched for a while. There's not a lot of them out there, and there are even fewer of them. I think there's 0 of them. In fact, they're able to just step in like for like. To speak a little bit more to the larger community amenity list, we went back to that several times with staff. And again, it was just, it was a case where it was impossible to find a matching operator who both could were on the list and could get into our space in time. So I think this might be a unique condition that may not be super applicable to all of your other projects.
Thank you. It's interesting to hear just the role that timing and predefined timing constraints put on this equation, at least this one. Any other economic or location-specific criteria that came up in conversations with other potential providers?
Nothing specific that I haven't already mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schindler. Commissioner Farrick?
Thank you. I actually have sorry, I don't want you to sit down. I'm going to ask you to come right back. Yes, good idea. I have two questions, one for the applicant and one for staff. I'll start with you since you're kindly back up the dais very promptly. I think I'm gleaning from the person that made the public comment that there's a concern about the sidewalk conditions and kind of the pedestrian experience in the area. Can you talk to the conditions of your site, of the construction site, and like how that might change or be better once it's not an active construction site?
The portions of the frontage on Constitution and Jefferson that are immediately in front of the buildings that are under construction are going to be built and delivered exactly as envisioned in the original entitlements and the original design. And I think it's fair to say that those are upgraded, improved conditions versus what was there before, and is working to forward the vision that's in a lot of the streetscape design guidelines and everything that went into that during the entitlement design review process the first time. And similarly, when the townhome portions are built, they will match that portion of the frontage doesn't get built until the townhomes gets built, because there's utility connections underground that need to be matched up. They can't really be separated. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I
Okay.
guess I was a little unclear. I think that's what I was deriving, and I may be wrong, like a general concern, but I know you can't speak to the entire District 1, but just, is there something that's challenging for the residential neighbor pedestrian experience around the site that might even incrementally be improved over the next, phase of construction so that it's a little more livable for everybody? I think that's what I was interpreting the concern to be.
I mean, I can say that our project is going to deliver exactly as was promised originally, and consistent with all the conditions that were imposed on the project originally.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just ask if you could, just keep an eye on that as you proceed through construction, just to kind of hopefully, like pull back the fences when possible and things like that so that people can get by. Thank you. The next question is for staff. In the event that this passes, that there's going to be an in lieu payment, what are, if any, are the requirements the city is under to use those funds? Like, do they need to be used in a particular way in District 1, or like, what happens with that money?
Yeah, I'll take that. Good question. So the in lieu payments that are made for community amenities do go into a fund. It's called the Bayfront Community Amenity Fund. It is for use of implementing community amenities in the area north of US 101 in the Bay, with a focus on the Bellhaven neighborhood. So ultimately, it is a decision that the council will need to make in terms of how and when to disperse those funds and which projects. I will mention that in the upcoming fiscal year, the current fiscal year, but in the calendar year 2024, there is a disbursement of $300,000 for park improvements in the Bellhaven neighborhood. That's in our capital improvement program. So there are some things that are currently underway utilizing these funds. But the broader funds would need additional guidance from the council through policy decisions, study sessions to provide that context or guidance, to staff.
Then with respect to the space that is now not...
Through the chair, Mike.
Thank you. With respect to the space that's now not going to be a medical clinic, what is the applicant able or not able to use that space for?
So that space will be used with, right now they're proposing to be occupied with a commercial use that is allowed in the RMU zoning district. So they can have an office or like a personal service space operation in that space. There is kind of a list of several items, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but you can have a small restaurant. There are like several things that that space could be used as. There are also conditional uses that the RMU zoning district has listed. And as the applicant mentioned, if they find a tenant that wants to do an operation which is a conditional use, then they will have to come through and go through that entitlement process, and the planning commission would have the opportunity to see that use. If that use is a permitted use under the zoning district, then we would just issue them the tenant improvement permits, and then they are able to occupy that space.
Okay, thank you. And then what if, is there a mechanism to, that was the helpful Commissioner Schindler, Vice Chair Schindler's question around, like, sounds like we kind of made the parameters too narrow inadvertently because there was a tenant in tow. What if they, for example, found something like a childcare provider or something that would be community serving, useful for the residents, et cetera? Like, would that be something that they could revisit the in lieu payment and kind of come back to that, or is that just a use that's too far afield from the original?
Oh, so let me start. So that use could go in there regardless of whether or not it's a community amenity. It's not identified on the list of permitted uses, but it certainly could be a use that's applied for and goes through a review process. Actually, I should confirm that. Let me follow up on the process, whether it's a conditional, administrative, or permitted use. But a childcare facility could locate in that space with or without it being a community amenity, regardless of the payment being made.
Got it. I guess I was thinking it would be more affordable if they didn't, I'm assuming that Greystar would be subsidizing it if it was the nonprofit medical clinic, just like they might be able to do if it was a nonprofit or lower profit childcare facility.
Yeah, and if I may follow up through the chair. So in response to the question about the process, I mean, it's administratively permitted use.
Great, thank you.
I had skipped over that section of the code while trying to answer.
Thank you. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Farrett. Commissioner Riggs.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I have anything to suggest that will get us out of the disappointing position that we are in. I do think Commissioner Farrick put it well that we had perhaps gotten a bit too specific in our approval regarding the care clinic. And it is disappointing that rather than clarifying that approval, we are, in a sense, throwing the baby and the bathwater out together and just going with an in lieu payment. Again, the history of this body has predominantly been to ask for the services that are outlined as community amenities rather than increasing the amount in a fund that will, the use of which will be determined by the politics of the moment. So I think I would just like to confirm through the chair with the city attorney that with the amendment that the city council made, it is no longer our option as a commission to ask for an alternative community amenity. Is that correct?
Neera, do you want to?
I'm happy to jump in as well, though I'm not going to say anything.
Ms. Doherty.
First of all, good evening, Planning Commissioners, Neera Doherty, City Attorney. The At the outset, when the applicant proposed the project before it was approved, the city could not have denied a proposal to pay the in lieu fee as a means of satisfying their community amenities obligations. The city is not under an obligation per se to approve payment of the in lieu fee at this juncture because the project has been entitled and approved. However, the applicant has made clear that they cannot perform under the existing community amenities proposal that has been memorialized in the CUP and operating covenant. And as a result, in order to ensure that the project moves forward and the housing gets built and completed, we do recommend that the commission approve a community amenity that is feasible to enable the project to move forward. And if the commission has specific questions on the feasibility of other community amenities, I assume the applicant can speak to that this evening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I would say that though I have not recently reviewed the menu and which entrees and which desserts have already been selected, I can't help but feel that rather than adding more cash to the miscellaneous pot, it would be nice to know if, for example, a telecommunications investment is possible. We have had cell service issues in and around the Connect Menlo area off and on for, maybe 20 years. And sound walls adjacent to 101 are listed. Neighborhoods on both sides of the freeway adjacent to this project area, in fact, have been clamoring for sound walls. One to protect a park area and a play field. One, I think, somewhat more sensitive to replace 89 homes that before the freeway was improved 2 years ago by raising the concrete median, had relative little effect from freeway noise and now has constant effect from freeway noise. This is just an example of something that is not funded otherwise. I know personally because I've been pressing for it for about 2 years. Then the Dunbarton Rail has been defined in the past in stages, although it's a little scary when a state agency says it's a $1 to $2 billion project to fully activate the rail. To activate the portion from Meta up to Redwood Junction where Caltrain is a very small fraction of that amount, and had a great deal of interest at one time. So I think the community would be served by having these alternatives and perhaps others investigated before we throw up our hands and say, well, just turn it into cash. That may only be my opinion, but based on how we've acted before, I would urge that the feasibility issue be addressed with the alternatives. I would also, in order to help make that happen, be happy to amend the approval tonight to extend the timeline for the provision of the community amenity for 4 months, 6 months, whatever it takes to negotiate and investigate these alternatives. So I'll throw that out. And through the chair, I don't know whether the applicant would have a response at this time or not.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggs, for your exhaustive exploration. Can I based off of Commissioner Riggs' considerations and questions, could we ask the applicant to maybe speak to exploring some of those other amenities and how that might affect the timeline?
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. I guess two reactions to that. I guess the first is that the kind of driving force behind a lot of our evaluation and decision making was the timing in the operating covenant and the conditions of approval of the original project, which really obligate Greystar to deliver a very specific urgent care center by a certain date. So whenever we were evaluating either replacement urgent care centers or other options off of the amenity list, we always had in our mind, well, there's a certain date by which this has to be done. And looking at a lot of the options on the list, whether it's sound walls, funding agreements, those things do take an awful lot of time to fully evaluate and definitely to build and kind of provide the value. Thinking about it, building a sound wall is not something that is easy to do offsite of our project. We have to acquire the rights to do it. You have to talk to Caltrans. There's a lot that goes into that. Similarly, for any rail project that happens outside of the boundaries of our property line. The second thing that I'll note is that working with staff on this alternate proposal before you tonight, it was very clear that the imminent delivery of the first wave of housing in the first building was a really pressing matter, and having a plan, some kind of plan, alternative plan, approved by the time the housing is delivered was identified as a critical need. So there was really two major time factors that were driving our evaluation and our ultimate presentation of the option before you tonight. I don't want to speak for staff, and staff can add to this point, but it didn't seem like legally the city could approve delivery of the housing, provide a certificate of occupancy, let people occupy it without also confirming that this condition of approval had been met. And the condition of approval was provide an urgent care center by a certain date. So there was not a tremendous amount of time to, again, go completely back to the drawing board and try to evaluate everything else that's on the community amenity list. We went through it several times and tried to figure out which things were maybe shorter turnaround times. We did not find any uses of the community amenity value or any other users that could have been swapped in or otherwise utilized within the timeframes that we were obligated to perform under.
Thank you. And certainly don't want to postpone the delivery of housing. That's very important, and appreciate the gravity with which you have looked into this matter. And I don't mean to be dense, but I just, with Commissioner Riggs's questioning, I maybe have a question to staff just to help me understand if this, could the housing proceed, which sounds like it is already, it looks like it is already under construction. And like Commissioner Riggs is suggesting that January 2025, that was the constricting time factor. Could those be decoupled to give flexibility in developing community amenity?
Thank you, Chair. This is Eric Phillips again from the City Attorney's Office. And unfortunately, we can't do that because of the way the community amenity program is structured to enable the provision of density upon the provision of the specific community amenity. We do need a specific compliance mechanism and ability to collect that mechanism in place. Ordinarily, it's even before construction starts. Here, it's already been pushed back a little bit given the circumstances for certificate of occupancy, but we're not in a position where we can leave an open-ended commitment for further exploration and still be in a position to issue the certificate of occupancy to the project. And what we're hearing the applicant say is that really the feasible path for providing a community amenity and doing so on a time frame that allows them to achieve their certificate of occupancy is the payment of the in lieu fee. The nice thing about getting the in lieu fee is then the council can take the time that they want to decide how to invest and which of the amenities from the list they wish to implement. So for example, the sound wall is something that council could then use this money for in connection with other payments that they collect to make that more feasible. So it puts the city in the driver's seat to explore that feasibility and prioritize the amenities and take some of the pressure off the applicant to do so.
Great, thank you, and I appreciate that thorough explanation and the line of questioning from the commission. And appreciate the staff and applicant working together to work through this seemingly and most definitely large change in the middle of the process. I have does anyone have any other comments or discussion? I feel like we may. Commissioner Farrick.
It's just a comment. I mean, I also appreciate that. However, so it's the more efficient path forward, obviously. And I certainly agree that seeing this project through and getting the housing and hopefully the interest rates go down and we get the for sale housing as well. But as we know, when fees get kind of in the big bucket, like whatever happens to that, like it's just never attached to this project. It's just a thing the city does, and it just sort of disappears in the big. So it's just a disappointing kind of outcome that it feels as though we're being, we're kind of in a bind, because I think that the community and me want to see this project proceed, and it's a lesson for all of us, hopefully for you all too, not to agree to such a narrow stipulated kind of benefit like that the medical facility by date certain presented, because then it created a difficult situation. So not having the external dependencies be quite so specific. So anyway, I guess the comment is it's unfortunate that we're here, but it is what it is.
I had a follow-up question to staff, because the applicant, you said something which makes complete sense. You would have to acquire the land for sound walls, for instance, which is just not feasible at this point. When I'm looking at the community amenities list, transit and transportation improvements is pretty high up there as priority, and it says things like street improvements. Does that mean that it's only limited to street improvements on that property owned by that applicant? Is it not like they could fund and construct transit and transportation improvements on if it's not part of their property? Is that what that means?
So I'll take that question and then turn it over to Ms. Bagot or Mr. Phillips for any follow-ups. So the community amenities list is, when it comes to things like the transportation improvements, those are improvements that are beyond the standard requirements of a project. So like the fringe improvements that this project will construct, those are requirements. So those are not community amenities. And so to answer your question, those improvements, such as additional sidewalks or tree planting, those are intended for off-site improvements. The applicant may be able to respond about the feasibility of those, and I'm not going to opine on that, but those are intended for the area in the Bayfront area north of 101, with the focus on the existing more traditional residential neighborhood of Bellhaven. So these are improvements that are intended to, for sidewalks, lighting, landscaping. That one is really intended for the Bellhaven neighborhood. Improvements that are off-site, and the same with the other transit and other improvements that are mentioned in the list.
Okay, thank you. And it wasn't specifically to this applicant, it was just in general, but that was helpful to understand off-site. That was just a side question. Would anyone like to, Commissioner Eric Schindler.
I don't want to cut off discussion if other commissioners would like to continue. However, I'm at the point where I would like to make a motion to approve as per the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric.
And I'm happy to offer a second to that recommendation that we accept the staff resolution with the appropriate conditions. And I think I will carry with me a deeper understanding of the amenities process and sensitivity to on-site, off-site timing, narrowness of definition going forward, just on the basis of this particular example.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schindler. I am going to look to you, Commissioner Riggs, to see if you wanted to.
Oh, I appreciate the invitation. I can read when an applicant would rather not investigate alternatives, and I can certainly see where an existing contract is the defining relationship between the applicant and the city, and it's very difficult to think outside that box. And I don't want to push a boat upstream without a motor. So I certainly understand and hear what the applicant is saying. I am disappointed, but I think that's, as Ms. Farrick has observed, we perhaps didn't think that this might happen or consider how to handle it. If we already had a fund for an improvement that we would like to see and could say, okay, that fund is where the 9.8 million could go, that would certainly have simplified the evening. But we don't have that. So I'm prepared to vote, and I appreciate everyone's participation in the conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggs. And I share the sentiments that are so well put by Commissioner Riggs in particular, and our public commenter, Ms. Jones. But just understand the difficult situation that we are in, and hope that we can learn from it. So we have a first from Commissioner Eric and a second from Vice Chair Schindler, and we'll go ahead and move to vote to approve the revisions to the use permit and architectural permit with the additional conditions that staff had recommended. Commissioner Eric.
Yes.
Commissioner Farrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Riggs.
Yes.
Vice Chair Schindler.
Yes.
I am also a yes, so that's 5 yeses and 1 absent, and the motion passes. Thank you for your time. That brings us to our second item. F2 and G1 are associated items with a single staff report. I'm sorry, I'm going to check with staff. Should I read this whole? No.
So I think the easiest would be to read for the EIR scoping session, the whole item. For the study session, I think we can truncate that to just the kind of title and the actions that are requested, and we can write something up and email it over to the chair to read through for that item. But for the scoping session, given the complexity, it's best to read that item in
Okay.
full.
Thank you, and apologies for not checking in on that earlier. Okay, so this is item F2, request for an environmental impact report, EIR scoping session for a project at 3705 Haven Avenue to comprehensively redevelop the 0.66 acre site, zoned residential mixed-use bonus, RMUB, with a bonus level development project consisting of an 8-story mixed-use building with 99 dwelling units and approximately 1,550 square feet of commercial space. The proposed project would demolish an existing 10,361 square foot commercial building. The project includes a total of approximately 14,629 square feet of common open space, including approximately 4,670 square feet of publicly accessible outdoor space. In addition, the project would potentially include a battery-powered electric emergency generator. The proposed project would be developed using the bonus level development allowed by the city's municipal code, which provides for an increase in density, gross floor area or intensity, and or height in exchange for the provision of community amenities. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to utilize state density bonus law to incorporate additional density and square footage when on-site below-market BMR housing units are provided. The proposed community amenity would not involve any additional building construction and would either be provided on-site within the proposed building, payment of an in lieu fee, or a combination of an on-site amenity and a fee. With the city's bonus level density, the allowed density would result in 66 units. Of the 66 units, the project is providing 15%, equal to 10 units, as below market rate units affordable to very low income households, which makes the project eligible for the following state density bonus law benefits: a 50% density bonus for up to 99 units, 3 concessions, unlimited waivers, and use of state density bonus law parking standards. The applicant is requesting concessions and waivers pursuant to the state density bonus law to increase the density and gross floor area of the project, as well as to increase the building height and modify the parking requirements. The proposed building would contain approximately 117,335 square feet of gross floor area of residential uses and 1,550 square feet of gross floor area of commercial space, for a total floor area ratio of 413%. The project includes the removal of 13 trees, 3 of which are heritage trees. The proposed project is considered a housing development project pursuant to the Housing Accountability Act. Environmental review is required to assess the potential environmental impacts of the report. The Notice of Preparation, or NOP, was released on December 1st, 2023. The NOP provides a description of the proposed project, the location of the proposed project, and a discussion of the project's probable environmental effects. The EIR will address potential physical environmental effects of the proposed project as outlined in the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. An initial study was not completed, as it is anticipated this will be a full EIR and no topic areas will be scoped out, with the exception of agricultural and forestry resources, mineral resources, and wildfire that are topic areas not anticipated to require further analysis. The city is requesting comments on the scope and content of this EIR. The project location does not contain a toxic site pursuant to Section 659.6.2 of the Government Code. Comments on the scope and content of the EIR are due by 5 p.m. Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. And Ms. Khan.
Good evening, Chair Doak, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public. I'll start off with a presentation and I'll share my screen to begin. Tonight, we'll be undergoing an EIR scoping session and study session for 3705 Haven Avenue. These are 2 separate public meetings. First, we'll do the EIR scoping session, followed by the study session. The scoping session for an EIR is initiated by the publication of the NOP, which has been done earlier this month. Public comments are due by January 10th, 2024. The project requires a full EIR. Through the scoping session, there's an opportunity to comment on the EIR topics that will be studied, which are provided in more details in the staff report. As for the study session, we are looking for general feedback on the project. There will be no action taken tonight on the project. Staff recommends tonight's meeting format as shown on the slide, which includes staff's introductory presentation, after which the applicant team will present, and our final presentation will be by the environmental consultants, after which we will open it to the public comment and commissioners' questions and comments. With that, we'll close out the scoping session and move towards the study session portion of tonight's project. Staff thought it would be beneficial for the Planning Commission and members of the public to receive the applicant's presentation during the EIR scoping session portion of the public hearing to provide a summary of the proposed project. The project is located north of 101, west of Marsh and Bayfront Expressway at the bend of Haven Avenue. The parcels to the west, shown here in brown and yellow stripes, are in the high-density residential affordable housing overlay. Parcels in red are zoned as office. The subject property and the one directly across it in brown are zoned residential mixed-use bonus. Parcels further in pink with white dots are previously M2 zone parcels. As a mixed-use project with more than 2/3 residential, qualifies as a housing project under Senate Bill 330. An SB 330 project under the Project Streamlining Act caps the number of public meetings to 5. Tonight's meeting counts towards one of the 5. The proposed project is a 99-unit residential development project with ancillary commercial use of 1,550 square feet. Of the 99 units, 10 of them will be affordable to very low housing income households. The project will be utilizing the city's bonus level in exchange for community amenity and state density bonus, which allows for 3 concessions and unlimited waivers. The applicant is requesting 1 concession and 4 waivers at this time. The concession includes not to include the cost of parking in the overall cost for the tenants residing in the affordable units, waivers to further increase height and floor area ratio, reduce ground floor commercial areas parking, which is 4 spaces, and lastly, reduce the ground floor commercial height from 15 feet to 10 feet. The applicant is still considering whether they would like to request additional concessions or waivers to partially offset cost. With this, I conclude staff's presentation on the EIR scoping session, and I welcome the applicant team to the desk to present their presentation.
Hello. Good evening, planning commissioners and audience. My name is Emerald Xu, and I'm with 3705 Haven LLC, March Capital, representing the developer team. We're a team founded in 2014. We're a women and minority-owned real estate investment and development firm headquartered in San Francisco. We're focused on repositioning, developing, and extracting the best and highest use out of underutilized properties. And today's presentation will largely be presented by our architect partner, LDP Architecture. And here it is, Michelle.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Michelle Loeb. I'm a principal at LDP Architecture. We're a woman-owned small business enterprise based in San Francisco, founded in 1979, and we specialize in multifamily housing throughout the Bay Area. Staff gave a great presentation about the site, but including some additional graphics here. 3705 Haven is located near the 101 and 84 in the Bellhaven neighborhood. This area has a mixture of warehouses, commercial and residential uses, along with a proposed 8-story hotel just to the north of the site. These photos are the existing 1-story cement plaster office building and parking area at grade to be demolished. As mentioned, the site is a RMUB, Residential Mixed Use Bonus District, and the site is 2,808 square feet. Some of the items to note on this table are that the allowed density at a bonus level is 100 dwelling units per acre, or 66 units. The max floor area ratio at a bonus level is 225%, or 64,818 square feet. The development is utilizing the state density bonus. This project will provide 10 very low income units, 15% of the 66 base units. This allows a 50% bonus equating to 33 additional units. The total unit count of the proposed project will be 99 units, which is a density of 150 dwelling units per acre. And the gross floor area of the project is 114,155 square feet. As mentioned, we're seeking 1 concession and 4 waivers. And moving on. This graphic shows the unit mix. There's a mixture of units from junior 1-bedrooms up to 3-bedroom units. And also listed here are the associated square footages. On the right, you can see the variety of the 10 below market rate units provided throughout the project. They're highlighted in orange at the lower portion of this slide. We've been working with the city staff for more than a year and a half with the preliminary SB 330 application submitted in May of 2022. The EIR consultant, DJP&A, was approved by the City Council of July of this year, bringing us to today's meeting. So some sustainable features of this project site, we're targeting LEED Gold certification. We're providing electric vehicle charging spaces. We have a solar-ready zone on the roof. We're dual plumbing and are providing water-efficient fixtures throughout the project. We have an elevated first floor level to mitigate sea level rise and to deal with the flood zone of the adjacent bay. And we have on-site required storm management and street-level stormwater treatment bioretention planters. The design is a contemporary take on a courtyard building. The building mass steps back per zoning requirements with a base of 48 foot 3 inches provided. There's a 55-foot max allowed in this area. We're providing high-quality exterior materials to add visual interest and emphasize different volumes, along with various window sizes and patterns to help break down the form. Getting into the elevations, this is Haven Avenue East with a central courtyard featured on the 3rd floor level. We're stepping back at the 5th floor for allowing sunlight into the courtyard, which we have studied in shadow studies, and also to provide a resident amenity to the residents. This is Haven Avenue South, which is the primary pedestrian entrance. Both Haven Avenue along the east side and the south side will also have the vehicle entrances. The west elevation features undulating bays and floating balconies to create visual interest along the north elevation and the west elevation. And here on the north elevation, you can also see the 8th floor roof deck above. As mentioned, a variety of materials are featured in the development to really emphasize the massing of the building. Materials include cement plaster, fiber cement panel, box corrugated metal panels, which are offset to add interest, and wood look aluminum slats. The building also features sunshades and metal guardrail elements, particularly for the decks and outdoor spaces. Here you can see some of the site improvements. We're highlighting here the new street pavement, new sidewalks, and new driveways the development will be providing. We'll be undergrounding utilities along the frontage. Another thing to note on this slide is that we are respecting a 9-foot non-buildable easement along the north side of the site that is below grade, adjacent to the property line. Publicly accessible open space is all around the building with lighting and sculptural seating on the north and the west sides of the building. A gathering space with a seat wall and a little free library is proposed at the corner to help serve the community. And we're removing 13 existing trees, saving 4, and we will be providing 15 new trees at the street level. Additional trees are provided in the open spaces above. The private open spaces intended to be used by the residents are layered in the building with the courtyard mentioned at level 3. This has a pool and resident amenity spaces that open onto that area. Common resident roof decks are featured at floors 5 and 8, corresponding with the setbacks of the building. A variety of Mediterranean-style native and drought-tolerant species are proposed throughout the project. This diagram highlights the circulation, particularly the pedestrian circulation around the building in light green, as well as bike and vehicle access to the site. Note the 2 driveways are located similar to the existing conditions, with one at the south and one at the east corners of the site. Looking at the ground floor and second floor plans here, we're providing 16 short-term bike parking spaces at grade adjacent to the entry. Long-term bike parking is included, one on the ground floor at the commercial space and 149 long-term storage at the second floor level for the residents. Resident parking is 1-to-1 with 99 spaces, including 5 ADA, 10 electric vehicle supply equipment spaces, and 5 EV-ready spaces. Also note that the parking is on 2 separate levels in this development. Moving up the building, amenity spaces are shown in purple, resident units in yellow, and BMR units in orange again. You can see the private open space mentioned at floors 3, 5, and 8 on this slide, and the stepping back of the building in these plans per requirements. And to close, thank you, commissioners, for your time. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments.
Great, thank you.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. Good evening, Chair Doe and Planning Commissioners. My name is Christy Weiss. I'm with David J. Powers and Associates, and our firm was hired to assist the city in preparing the EIR for this project. So the purpose of this EIR scoping meeting is to provide an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR process, and also to provide an opportunity for the public to comment on the scope and content of the EIR. So for my presentation, I will go over the purpose of CEQA and an EIR, the EIR resource areas to be studied, and the EIR process and schedule. And I'll also be here to listen and take note of the public's comments on the scope and content of the EIR. So the purpose of CEQA is to disclose environmental impacts, identify and prevent environmental damage, disclose decision-making, enhance public participation, and foster intergovernmental coordination. The purpose of an EIR is to inform decision makers and the public about the project's impacts and identify ways to mitigate or avoid impacts. The EIR will also evaluate a range of feasible alternatives to the project that would meet most of the project's basic objectives and avoid or substantially lessen the environmental impacts of the project. I also want to note that the purpose of an EIR is not to advocate for approval or denial of the project. So the resource areas to be studied in the EIR are listed on this slide. The EIR will evaluate existing conditions and the project's impact on these resource areas. In addition, a housing needs assessment and a fiscal impact analysis will be prepared for the project. The EIR process and schedule includes 6 primary steps, which are identified on this slide. The first step is to circulate a notice of preparation, or NOP, for the draft EIR. The NOP for the project started circulating on December 1st and will conclude on January 10th. During the NOP circulation period, the city will host a scoping meeting, which is what we're doing right now. The comments received on the NOP and at this scoping meeting will be taken into consideration when preparing the draft EIR. The city anticipates circulating the draft EIR in September of 2024, and it would circulate for 45 days for public comment. While not required under CEQA, the city will also host a public meeting to receive comments on the draft EIR during that circulation period. After the draft EIR comment period ends, the city will prepare a final EIR, which will include responses to comments received on the draft and any edits to the draft EIR. It's anticipated that the final EIR will circulate in fall of 2024. After a 10-day review period of the final EIR, public hearings will be held to consider the certification of the EIR and approval of the project. Note that the asterisks on this slide indicate opportunities for public comment. When providing comments during the scoping meeting, questions to consider are: what environmental issues should be analyzed? Are there alternatives that should be evaluated? And what mitigation measures would help avoid or mitigate any negative impacts? So there's an opportunity this evening for oral comments on the scope and content of the EIR, and the public can also provide written comments until January 10th at 5 p.m. to 15 at the address shown on this slide. If you send an email, if the public sends an email, or anybody, please make sure to put 3705 Haven Avenue EIR in the subject heading. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back to Fatim.
Thank you. With that, we conclude the presentation for the EIR scoping session by staff, the applicant, and our environmental consultant. With that, I hand it over back to you, Chair Doe.
Okay, thank you. So are there any clarifying questions, and only on the EIR scoping portion at this moment, right? Clarifying questions from the commission to staff, applicant, or consultant? No? Mr. Pruder, then let's go ahead and open public comment on the EIR scoping portion of this discussion tonight.
Thank you, Chair Doe. At this time, members of the public are welcome to raise their hand with the hand icon via Zoom or by pressing *9 if calling in by phone. We have one hand up at this time, so I'm happy to allow that person to speak at this time. All right. Excuse me. We have a person named Naomi Goodman. I'm just going to put the timer up, and then I will allow you to speak. Pardon me for that. Just one moment. And at this time, you are now able to unmute yourself, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. My name's Naomi Goodman. I'm speaking as a resident of Menlo Park and also on behalf of the Sequoia Audubon Society. As a resident of Menlo Park, I'm concerned about the impacts of 99 more residential units on traffic at the Willow Road Highway 84 intersection, which is already heavily impacted. I'm also concerned that the residents of this densely populated area have few options for public transportation to schools and shops in the city. The 270 bus line connects to Redwood City, not Menlo Park. Please evaluate these issues in the EIR. On behalf of SAS, Sequoia Audubon, I'm concerned about the closeness of this tall building to the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge and Bedwell Bayfront Park. First, the project plan and draft EIR should provide specifics on measures to minimize bird collision with windows. We appreciate the commitment to bird-safe design expressed in the October 2023 project description letter. However, to evaluate these measures in the draft EIR, we will need more detail. The photos of the roof deck on sheet L3 of the plan shows transparent panels that will pose a serious risk to birds. Please require that the final project plan include the specific requirements that were in the Willow Village EIR for bird-safe design. Those were included in the April 2023 plans, but are missing from the September 2023 revision. Second, the building should minimize high-intensity lighting and avoid light pollution of the baylands to the extent possible. Artificial light at night is bad for both wildlife and human health. We appreciate the commitment to dark sky-friendly external lighting expressed in the October 2023 letter, but the plan proposes, 4,000 Kelvin LED streetlights without full shielding. The draft EIR should list specific measures to avoid light pollution, such as fully shielded streetlights with brightness no higher than 3,000 Kelvin, motion sensors on lights in common areas and roof decks, light blocking blinds on residential units, and downward facing exterior lights. Finally, the developer should select replacement trees that are California native species if possible. Native trees provide better habitat for birds and use less water. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comment.
At this time, I do not see any other hands raised, but happy to wait a little longer if you'd like, Chair Doe.
Sure, we'll give it a moment. Are there any more commenters?
I do not see any additional commenters. If you'd like, you can close public comment for this portion of tonight's item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's close the public comment for the EIR scoping portion of tonight and bring it back to the commission for questions and discussion. And there's no action tonight. So just questions and discussion on the EIR scoping at the moment. Would anyone like to start? And actually, while people are, Commissioner Riggs.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'll introduce this or address this to Ms. White, just to make sure I'm making a comment at the appropriate time. I do hear Ms. Goodman's comment about the traffic, and I know the Marsh Road impacts all too well. The added load of another 100 units is definitely going to be noticeable, as Haven Avenue has already had a significant effect on the Marsh Road intersection. So would it be appropriate for the EIR to evaluate access to the Redwood City Caltrain station as part of the mediation of an impact? And that would be a question.
Hi, Chair. If I could address Commissioner Riggs' comment. Yes, the EIR will look at transit access to and from the project site, and if there are impacts identified, corresponding mitigation would be identified as well.
All right, thank you.
I had a, while others are considering their comments, I had a question to staff. The 99 units is using the state density bonuses to maximize the residential development. And the commercial space of about 1,500 square feet, that's not maximizing the allowable commercial space, is that right?
That is correct.
And I believe in the staff report, staff didn't recommend, but suggested that it could be an option to include it as an alternative to be studied in the EIR. And I only bring it up in light of the previous conversation about allowing flexibility, for instance, a very large childcare center, for example. So just, I don't know how other commissioners feel, but it might make sense in that light of allowing flexibility of including that as a scenario that's studied of maximizing the commercial space, because I think right now it's below the maximum.
So through the chair, are you looking for a response from staff, or was that a comment?
I think it was a comment. I think Ms.
Okay.
Khan answered my question, and I've just a comment. Thank you. Vice Chair Schindler.
Thank you, Chair Doe. I'll actually expand a comment and a question, starting with Chair Doe's question. In the context of the EIR, I know that a project alternative or alternatives need to be identified as part of the process. And there were not concrete alternatives laid out and defined in the staff report today, because my understanding is that's still part of the thought process. And as Chair Doe pointed out, the commercial square footage is not only below the maximum, but I'll go further and I'll say it looks really small. Like it almost looks like that for that reason, and we'll talk about this later in the context of the project, it's potentially too small to be a significant contribution to the development / the community. And if that space were going to become part of the community amenities, it also seems like it's a little on the small side. So I could envision an EIR alternative that expands, as Chair Doe said, expands the commercial component. So that's an alternative. It's not necessarily an alternative that mitigates or reduces environmental impact, but it is, I think, an important alternative to be evaluated. On the flip side, because the commercial space is so small, if it were to be completely eliminated, and it was going to become 100% residential project, I don't know if that would require an alternative, an EIR project alternative as well too. But I could potentially see it going that direction as well. Those were the two things that I could come up with as I was reading through and primarily reacting to the commercial square footage. I'm still thinking about what other potential alternatives might be. And I am looking forward to hearing commentary from my fellow commissioners to help with my creativity process.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schindler. Commissioner Farrig.
Thanks. A very short list is, and it's really more of a question, I think, for you, whether an EIR can study traffic impacts if the one-to-one parking requirement were fewer. So if there weren't the requirement to have a space of parking, what would the impact be on project traffic? So, like let's say it's half, let's say there's 50 parking spaces. Yeah.
So just to clarify, if I may, through the chair, is the request is to potentially look at a project alternative that would be a reduced parking alternative to see if that has an impact on reducing a potential transportation impact. Traffic congestion wouldn't be an EIR impact, but potentially limiting parking could reduce VMT depending on how the model looks or the particular analysis. So that's reduced parking is one that I know the city has included in other EIRs as alternatives. So that is that consistent
Yes.
with the comment that you're providing? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrick. Any other, Commissioner Eric?
Thank you, Chair Doe. I think this is a question for the applicant. I would also noted that the commercial space is there, but oddly small, and I'm wondering, is there an intended use for that commercial space already? Or is there some rationale behind the inclusion of that space at this point?
Thank you for the question, Michelle Loeb again here. So there's no proposed use for that space at this time.
Okay, thank you. This is my first EIR scoping session since I've been on the Planning Commission, so I'm excited to participate at this early stage of the project, and I'll just echo, I think, the points made by other commissioners. In particular, one lesson I took away from the EIR for the housing element, which is obviously an EIR in a completely different context, but that EIR seemed to constrain future options, and obviously it's not possible to study every possible alternative, and I realize that's a difficult part of CEQA, but I think it would be wise, as Commissioner Schindler pointed out, to evaluate increasing the amount of commercial space potentially to the maximum allowed, as that might be something that the city would be interested in. And I also think Commissioner Farrick's suggestion of evaluating a lower parking alternative is wise. So my comments are broadly aligned with the rest of the commission. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric. I also wanted to return to what our public commenter said about being very near the bayfront and the wetlands. And from past EIRs, I feel like there always is discussion of, I forget the terms, but basically minimizing impacts on a sensitive habitat nearby. So I don't think this is really feedback that will probably change what happens in the EIR, but I did want to emphasize her comments about just how close this site is to sensitive wetlands. So just kind of throwing extra emphasis to that. And I do acknowledge that in EIRs that language is typically there. Commissioner Eric.
Sorry, I realized I actually had one more question, and I think maybe this is for the CEQA consultant. As I said, this is my first EIR scoping session, so I'm not entirely familiar with the process. Is there modeling that will go on as part of the EIR that should commercial space be included? Would the modeling of VMT have anything to do with the specific uses of that commercial space? Like in my head, say there were to be a grocery store as part of this development or nearby, in my head, that would reduce VMT because people need food a lot, and if they have to drive to a grocery store, then that causes them to drive. But I don't know if the modeling gets that specific or not.
Hi again, Chair. To answer Commissioner Eric's question, there is modeling involved with the VMT analysis for the EIR, and it's dependent on land use type. And so when there's no specific tenant identified for commercial use, there's some generalized commercial trip generation rates and data that go in that captures, a range of commercial uses that could go into that space. So if, like the applicant mentioned there's no tenant identified, then we would use a generic commercial evaluation in the VMT analysis.
And if I may add to that too, I know that Ms. Weiss and her team have been coordinating with city staff to identify those assumptions that will leave that future flexibility that the commission was asking about. Our goal is to capture uses that don't overstate the impact, but at least set the ceiling of the potential impact at the higher end so that we don't have to go back and relook at a more intensive use in the future. And if something were to come in that was less intense, that would already have been analyzed because the EIR would have already identified any more severe impacts. So we are trying to address the comment of flexibility in that way.
That is great to hear. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll look to our EIR consultant and staff and just check in to see if the feedback from the commission regarding alternatives, I think that's mainly the bulk of our comments have been alternatives that explore and allow flexibility in their the kind of the worst case scenario of impacts. Just check in that you've gotten the feedback you were seeking.
Hi, Chair Doe. Yes, I've taken notes and I'll go back and watch the video of this meeting, but I captured your comments about the potential alternatives that the commission wants to evaluate related to possibly maximizing the commercial space, evaluating a lower parking requirement alternative for the project. I also had notes about making sure we address the impacts to transit, including access to the Caltrain station, and then impacts to biological resources, including the baylands, birds, and wetlands. Did I capture it all?
I think so. And Vice Chair Schindler, I think you also had an alternative that looked at just eliminating commercial and just maximizing.
Right, I got that one.
Yes, the idea of potentially 100% residential. And I think I'll just take a moment to just say explicitly what I'm not proposing as an alternative. In prior EIRs, there sometimes are discussions about alternatives with reduced density. And while that may be part of an analysis of an alternative scenario, I'm supportive of the project at the density at which it is proposed, including the state bonus density. So I'm pleased to see it go through with those numbers and understanding the EIR impact at that level of density.
All right, great. I feel like everyone has had a chance to speak. And I believe we have to officially close, right? This EIR, close the EIR scoping session. That is item F2. Close the public hearing portion of this item. And thank you to the applicant and architect and consultant, and Ms. Khan. And move to G, the study session portion for 3705 Haven. And that is item G1. I believe Mr. Parada has sent a shortened text for everyone's relief. Study session for a project at 3705 Haven Avenue to comprehensively redevelop the 0.66 acre site zoned residential mixed-use bonus RMUB. The proposed project would construct a 99-unit building with approximately 1,550 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The project would be developed using the bonus level development allowed by the city's municipal code, which provides for an increase in density, gross floor area or intensity, and/or height in exchange for the provision of community amenities. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to utilize state density bonus law to incorporate additional density and square footage when on-site below market rate or BMR housing units are provided. The proposed project is anticipated to include the following entitlements: EIR certification, including adoption of findings and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, or MMRP, use permit for bonus level development, including the community amenity, architectural control permit, below market rate or BMR housing agreement, and heritage tree removal permits. And remind me, will there be another staff presentation or Ms. Khan?
Yes, Chair Doe. So I'll just do a brief presentation, no slides, so it's a verbal presentation. So as part of the, if I may, Chair, should I start? Okay.
Please.
Thank you. As part of the study session, commissioners may wish to discuss various items that have been pointed out in the staff report, which include site and building design, publicly accessible open space, commercial space, and community amenity, which have been listed out in detail in the staff report. With that, I hand it back to you, Chair Doe.
Great, thank you. Any clarifying questions to staff or the applicant team before we take public comment? No? Okay, Mr. Pruder, if we could go ahead and take public comment for the study session portion of this project.
Thank you, Chair Doe. At this time, as a reminder for members of the public, if you'd like to publicly comment and you're in person, please come by with a comment card, or if you are virtually attending, you may press the hand icon on Zoom or *9 on your phone, and we'll allow you to mute yourself and speak on this item. I see no hands raised at the time, but we can certainly wait for a moment and just confirm that there are no commenters. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, we'll give it a moment. And how about now?
At this time, I still see no hands raised, so if you'd like, we could close the public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. This is a study session, so no action will be required of us tonight. Would anyone like to start? Well, while others are considering their thoughts, I had a few questions. I think the project is certainly not monotonous. I think there's a lot of building modulations that you can see in plan with the angular rhythm of the walls and the balconies that are sometimes projecting and sometimes recessed, and then in elevation, seeing some of those roof angles echo what's happening in plan. And also clearly generous outdoor space, shared outdoor space for the residents with the tiered roof decks. I had a few questions on the 8th floor roof deck. I haven't been on an 8th floor roof deck in a long time, or maybe ever. And also so close to the wetlands. I'm just curious about wind and exposure up there. I don't know if there's maybe similar projects you can refer to, or if somehow that can be studied. It just seems to me like maybe on that northern exposure, it could be rather exposed and windy up that high. That's a question. I have a couple of other questions, but maybe I'll start there to the applicant.
Thank you for your question. We have considered wind on the roof deck and can consider further as we continue our design. The guardrail at the Plan North originally was proposed to be solid glass and has since been revised in correspondence with staff to be an open metal guardrail. So that prevents or allows for more wind to come through, but The wind, I think, primarily was from the west. And so we do have parapet walls on some of the areas to help reduce wind loads on the roof deck.
Thank you. And don't have the elevations right in front of me, but is it the west or the east? Because I feel like I saw kind of a partial height wall, I think on the east elevation, or maybe you can pull up an elevation or verbally explain it.
I'm not sure if they'll be able to
So
pull them up.
Through the chair, perhaps Mr. Pruder may be able to pull up the presentation for the applicant to share, or the plan set from the staff report. So we'll give Mr. Pruder a minute. I think we can provide some context for the commission.
Okay, I also try to, east.
I could not pick out the wall in question.
That's where it would be. The 8-4 roof deck.
That's better than the other side.
So the 8th floor roof deck is on the plans on the right, in the upper right corner. And so along the north side is quite a bit of open guardrail, and the east side is solid parapet that has the angled upper portion, so some portions get quite tall. And then along the south side, it's overlooking the courtyard space, which is and the other side here, the west side, is the wall, the building wall.
The building wall, okay.
Yeah.
And on that right side, on the east side, just the parapet, just to get a sense of when you're in that space, that railing on the north is like railing height, whatever that is. And that parapet, I mean, how high are you talking? Is it like you couldn't like see over it, kind of? But
So it's an angled parapet. Let me see if I can bring that up for you. And so it starts at a lower height at 42 inches and angles up higher. I don't know I think it's another 3 feet above that at least.
okay, so it starts at railing height and then
angles up.
angles up.
Mhm.
Okay. No wonder I was having trouble finding the roof deck at first on the elevation. So that's helpful. Again, I don't know what it's like to be up there, so I trust your experience, and but that was just something that stuck out to me. Another question I had was now jumping to the publicly accessible open space. If you could go to like the ground, like the landscape plan on the ground floor. I think you mentioned some seating areas to the west and north, and I think actually the staff report also points it out. I'm just curious as to your thoughts on how long is that? Let's say you're going to that seating area on the west side of the building. How long is that walk, or what's kind of the experience of what would draw someone down there? Or conversely, on the north side, you kind of have to, it's kind of near the parking, access to the parking structure. And what would draw someone into those seating nooks that would make them a welcoming, publicly accessible open space?
Thank you for your question. So we tried to design the open space to have tiered landscape. So there are some raised planters and plantings within those, as well as trees. We've included a series of bollard lights along the landscaped walkway, and it's envisioned to be a wandering path to go around the building, potentially for residents to use, neighboring residents to use for walking dogs, walking through and having, a moment of quiet. And these, we're intending to do sort of sculptural seating that is an artistic flair in these areas, and to, hopefully draw people in that space.
Okay, thank you for your reply. And I can appreciate that you're probably also trying to maximize the site to create that density of housing, which is clearly desirable. And it could be the scale, but I just maybe need a noodle on at the scale that publicly accessible space along the north and west don't look quite inviting to me, but it could be the scale of the drawing too. So I might need to think about that a bit more and maybe let other commissioners share their comments at this point. Commissioner Eric.
Thank you, Chair Doe. My first question, I'm not sure if it's for staff or for the applicant, but it's regarding the one concession that's being requested. And I guess to start off, my question is this an administrative thing that we need to separate the cost of parking from the cost of the affordable units? When I read the staff report, it seemed to suggest that maybe it was because since the parking spot wasn't directly connected to the unit, that you couldn't actually include it in the cost of the unit. But I'm sort of just like, is this an administrative thing, or are we actually thinking that actually when you put together the cost of the unit plus the cost of parking, it will no longer be affordable?
So we'll start to answer your question, see if we actually answered, and if not, maybe the applicant can help too. But in some ways, I think the answer is both, that the applicant has proposed to unbundle parking. I mean, actually the city requires unbundled parking in this area regardless. So the applicant wants to make clear that although the residents of the income restricted units would still have access to the parking on the same terms that all the residents of the project would, that wouldn't reduce the cost of their rent if they were to also purchase a parking. So I guess the way that we would be looking at it under these terms is that the parking is an additional amenity that is available for purchase that's separate from the housing cost. And the housing cost would be restricted to the below market rate rents that the applicant is proposing. But the additional amenity of the parking would be above and beyond, and it would be up to an individual tenant to decide if they wanted to purchase that and if they could afford that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I think my concern here is complicated because I appreciate and from my own perspective, support the fact that the plans, at least as they exist right now, have them on the lower end or the minimum amount of parking for the number of units that are planned, which I think is a great thing. So I want to compliment that. I think my concern is that given that there will, not be as many parking spots and the general laws of supply and demand, it strikes me that potentially those parking spots could be sold or priced at an increased amount because there's not going to be as many as them as if you were in the higher end. And for market rate residents of this development, I think that's entirely appropriate and good and what we should be striving for. But for residents who are occupying the below market units, I would be really concerned if they were subject to high prices for parking, given that I appreciate the comment that it is an amenity that is offered and it is not required to have a parking spot. But functionally, I think having a parking spot would be something that most people who live in this unit want to have. So I realize we're trying to walk a fine line, but I'm asking for, I guess, some commentary on how we'll make the total cost of living in this development truly affordable for those affordable units.
Hi, Commissioner Eric, I can attempt to answer, or if, we'll see if I answer that. So the 15% affordable units are to the very low income households to start with. So they're, and also that qualifies us for state density bonus. And in nature of providing parking as an amenity, they're all unbundled. So, you know, we haven't really thought it through how it would operate and what kind of fee we'll charge. But, you know, it's not a necessity and definitely not part of the price or for the housing cost for parking to be considered. And the reason that we asked for this concession is that to kind of help out on the overall financial feasibility of the project. That, you know, in an attempt to provide to the 15% very low income households, you know, we want to make sure that overall the project is still feasible in the operating future stabilized state. I hope that helped a little.
Yes, that helps, and I appreciate the answer. I think what I would push you on, and we're not taking a vote tonight, so there's nothing binding here, is I think a simple solution to this would be even if you have the concession, somehow capping or setting the price for parking for the affordable units at a rate that ensured that the total cost of housing plus parking was affordable. And I'm not an expert in what that is, and I understand that there are financial considerations. So I take that to heart. My intuition is that lowering the price of parking for 15 units probably won't make or break a project. So I think that would be my push, and where the concession struck me as potentially, and I'm not sure, but potentially negating the spirit of affordable units in and of themselves. So I think there's probably, I don't know if that we need to decide on that tonight. I think there's probably more analysis to do, but I'll just leave that there. If you want to make another comment, I'm happy to hear it, but I'm also just happy to leave it there.
We'll take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I'm hoping that whoever's controlling the slides could put up the slide about the project timeline.
I believe that would be under the environmental consultants presentation for the timeline. This
Perfect.
actually shows the progress of the project thus far.
Yes. Okay. So I want to caveat this by saying that I think we should all operate from a place that everyone is, staff and applicant included, are doing their best, their absolute best to move things along quickly. But
I'm sorry, through the chair, if I may, which presentation do we need to put up? I'm sorry.
that slide that you had up was the right one.
I apologize, I'm putting it back up.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, I think we should all operate from a place of believing that everyone here is working as hard and as fast as they can, certainly on a project as exciting and forward-leaning as this. That being said, I would like to start by asking the applicant, is there anywhere on this timeline where you were surprised by how long the process took, or given your experience in other cities around the Bay Area, that it took longer than normal?
I want to start by saying that we appreciate the staff that we've been working with. They've been very helpful. But I would be lying if I said we were not surprised throughout the whole process. We're 12 plus 6, so we're 18 months in, and we're just at the very first public hearing. This is not the experience we've had, and we have, entitled and built many units in the city of San Francisco. So we often ask ourselves that question, and obviously we had many discussions with staff on how we could improve and getting things forward faster. We as the applicant try and do that ourselves. We actually are on a 4th round on the entire application package. We, gone through many compliance review comments with staff. But, to answer your question directly, we're quite surprised on the overall timeline, and we're happy that we qualify for SB 330. We know we're limited to 5 public hearings, but the fact that it took us, this long to get to the first hearing is quite disappointing.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to ask staff if it's appropriate or if you have any comments. Is there anything that the commission should understand about these types of projects? Is there anything we should understand about things the city could do better from a policy perspective to make it easier to move faster on projects like this? I realize that's an open-ended question and it might be hard to answer, but I would love any thoughts you have.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric. So understanding the applicant's comments and response and understanding the timeline in front of the commission on this slide. I mean, these projects are complex. There are a number of moving pieces. Certainly we do strive to work with applicants to process projects in a timely manner. And I think what my response would be is that at this point, working with the applicant, we have gone through a number of reviews. I think, Ms. Khan can talk through kind of where the project's at, but I think more importantly, it's moving forward now that we have contracts signed, agreements approved, environmental work being done, in terms of looking forward, in terms of ways that we can work together, applicant and staff, to process the application in a timely manner and bring it forward through the public review process, which does have a number of meetings, opportunities for public input, that is important to the community, and bring it through that process in a timely but authentic manner and genuine and comprehensive manner.
And then if I can point out where we see some of the longest lead time was in between issuing the RFP, having council select the consultant, getting into contract. And that's a function of the process that council has set forth for procuring consultants and working through the EIR process. Some jurisdictions will pre-approve a number of consultants on call and go through that process once a year or once every couple of years, and then it's a little faster to launch individual EIR processes. So that's one potential procedural change that council could enact that would speak to where I think we've seen the longest lead time here, where a procedural change would potentially affect a difference apart from just the standard process and the back and forth and the consistency review and the types of things that are just part of the nature of and the iterative nature of doing this type of work.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for their answers. I thought that was really informative, and my takeaway looking at this slide is that that point that was just made, accounted for somewhere between 6 and 9 months in this timeline, depending on how you count it. So I think that's really good to note, and I really appreciate the detail. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric. Commissioner Riggs?
Thank you. First, I have what may be sort of an obvious question, but I think it needs to be asked. Of the 99 units, how many of these units will be below market rate?
10 units will be, sorry to interrupt. Yep. 10 units will be below market rate to very low income households.
All right, thank you. It's been my habit, so don't be surprised if I say this, that when these projects come forward, and this has been true for more than a couple of years, I do like to help give some perspective for those who are following our proceedings, that there's a fair amount of excitement when we talk about providing a density of 150 units per acre and putting 99 new units out on the market. And people's reaction is, oh, thank God, we need the affordable housing. It's always helpful to clarify that we get 10 affordable units. I'd like to follow up on a couple of questions regarding parking. For one, it was indicated that no guest parking is proposed and no parking for the commercial. I can understand the commercial hasn't been decided yet, but it does presumably have a location and it does have an entry door. Have you already worked, and if through the chair, if I could ask the applicant, have you already worked with staff to determine on-street parking for commercial and for visitors?
I think we have reviewed that question, and along Haven Avenue on the east side, it's primarily red striped. So no parking availability on that side.
I'm sorry, could you get a little closer to the microphone?
So through the chair, actually, if I may, if you could, if the speaker could not use that microphone, but I think the middle one works better. I think that far microphone actually cuts out a little bit.
Is this better? So the frontage along the Haven East facade, quite a bit of it is red striped due to the existing site conditions and traffic circulation. And then along the south side of the site, to accommodate our garbage pickup, we're not able to provide parking along that frontage.
All right, so that sounds to me like you have two open questions. Of the 99 units, you might figure if it's predominantly studio and one bedroom, but there are some two bedrooms, and I actually do have the chart and I haven't looked at it today, that you can figure at least 2 occupants per unit on average. So you'll have a couple of hundred people there. And the presumption that they will have somewhere around 0 visitors, I think is just unrealistic. In particular, given the employment emphasis of this valley and the fact that these are market rate units. So I think that is something that you will want to reconsider. The ADA will put some requirements on you anyway. And then I apologize for being awkward and not actually being able to find the quoted amenities list. I could only find the more recent one. But I wanted to point out a couple of errors of perception. Most notable because it was actually in your presentation. Your project is not in Belhaven. Your project is approximately 1 mile away from Belhaven. Belhaven is a residential neighborhood that is on this one side of and east of Facebook. And you are actually adjacent to a community called North Fair Oaks. And although the strip of land happens to be Menlo Park, the adjacent homes and therefore the overall neighborhood is as much affected by North Fair Oaks as anything. At the moment, the market that the new residents will go to is in North Fair Oaks. I mean, it's technically in Redwood City, but it's where everybody from North Fair Oaks goes. And North Fair Oaks is across the street, et cetera. So when it comes to community amenities, a mistake might easily be made that you might want to consider, say, improving street lighting on Sevier Avenue, which is a mile away and not adjacent. And no one on Sevier Avenue will come up to Haven. What you would more likely want to look at would be, say, issues on Florence Avenue or Marsh Road. And I did want to ask, I guess through the chair, this would be a more appropriate question for Ms. Khan. What is the cumulative commercial square footage on Haven Avenue? And by commercial, I would mean neighborhood serving commercial. Since we've been building housing there for, I don't know, around 10 years, I guess. And an approximate number would be fine, but the reason that I'm asking is to try to fit into context whether this 2,000 square foot of proposed commercial would simply default to a coffee shop, or whether it might be part of a larger fabric of commercial, neighborhood serving commercial on a street that never had a neighborhood before this last decade.
Through the chair, if I may answer Commissioner Rick's question. So currently, there are no commercial square footage along Haven Avenue.
Oh. Okay, that was easy. So that might give us as a commission at least some context in which to consider what this small commercial space might be. For those who aren't familiar with the neighborhood, the grocery store that is, well, I don't know, maybe 6 blocks away, a short bike ride, is technically in Redwood City. It's where Redwood City, the county, and Menlo Park all join at an intersection. And along with that grocery store, which is sort of a wannabe Draker's, it's not not by any means a 7-Eleven, are a series of shops. So there are 3, maybe 4 restaurants, a dry cleaner, a Wells Fargo bank, a insurance office. One of the restaurants is an Irish pub with live music. And so there is a bit of a center there. And it serves the neighborhoods of Suburban Park, Lorelei Manor, and North Fair Oaks at this time. The awkward aspect for Haven Avenue is that it's on the other side of 101, and that bridge is highly impacted. So at times, new commercial would find that it's in a weak position competing with Marsh Manor, and then other times it would be the only place to go. So this might be the kind of thing where the best commercial would be what you would find in San Francisco, essentially an apartment building, and the bottom floor is a little like mini grocery shop. But that's just something to throw out as an idea. And then I know I made a note and I don't see it here, but architecturally, I do want to comment, and I want to start with the fact that I was really impressed with the massing and the materials of the project. The upper floors have interesting shapes and interesting fenestration, nice materials. I wouldn't mind seeing more of the knotty wood aluminum panels, but that's a matter of choice, certainly not direction. The issue comes when you get around the corner on Haven Avenue and you have 2 stories of big blank wall. Even though there isn't another residential building across the street and probably won't be anytime soon, the wall is not at all pedestrian friendly. And that is the walkway from the existing, I can't remember the name of the developer, the nonprofit developer that did the existing 4- and 5-story buildings there. That's the walkway you would use to get to Marsh Manor and or the post office, et cetera. And then just to follow up on Chair Doe's comments, if you're going to provide exterior space, public open space that wraps around the building, which is fully understandable since this is a very urban building, then the treatment of the first floor in particular, I mean, the second floor simply is not within view of a pedestrian unless he's an architect and he's walking with his head up, which leads to a funny story for another day. That needs to be, I think, as considered as it can be, just in order to be a pleasant surrounding. And frankly, there is some tagging in this area. It's not terribly prolific, but there are 2 taggers who have managed to stretch into their 2nd decade, so might as well be prepared for them. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Riggs. Vice Chair Schindler.
Thank you, Chair Doe. I want to just very quickly say that I was tremendously excited to read the details of this project because it represents many of the things that many on this commission have been driving for and hoping for in terms of city principles. The density, the proximity to employment, and to some extent transit just where it is located, although we wish it were public transit. The conservative parking assumptions are things that have showed up in this commission's feedback to multiple other projects, and this is your starting point, a very conservative parking number. And the mix of unit sizes represents a theme that's shown up on a couple of different directions this commission has advised. So you've got the small, but you've also got some of the 2- and 3-bedroom options, which in conversation has been family focused in other discussions this commission has been part of. With all of those exciting things, I also find myself sort of scratching my head at some of the things other commissioners have brought up. I know that the conservative, this will come up in a couple of other categories of my feedback, but the conservative parking is something that will show up again. So let me sort of try and organize my feedback, maybe in increasing order of complexity, so starting with the easier stuff. In terms of the categories, using the categories that were laid out for us by staff. In terms of architectural design, I share Commissioner Riggs' feedback, although not with his expertise, that it looks really nice. The one place that I sort of went, was the corner, where the little library is. There is something about that nook that just doesn't resonate with me, but unfortunately, without architectural skills, I can't offer a better alternative. But that just kind of looked a little weird to me. I share feedback, I share the sentiment that Chair Doe and others, I think Commissioner Riggs also sort of mentioned in the outdoor space. I think the phrase a wandering path was used to describe the goals. But to me, it looks super linear and like really like overly structured to the point of not being welcoming. I was really glad to see in your slide today that there were some chairs that had some curve to them, albeit they were made of cement. And so I think there is something that, again, it could be done to make that a more welcoming and inviting set of spaces, even with it being just as narrow and linearly bounded as it is. I don't know if that would include tables to invite people to come and not just wander through, but actually stay and spend some time, whether they were residents or non-residents. So those are kind of the two smaller and easier sides of things. I want to come back to the commercial space, which I brought up a little bit in the context of the EIR. I feel like the size is small, like potentially constraining just who would be interested in that. I think when you add that on top of that, no parking, and potentially even the restriction of the ceiling height, it starts to be, again, not being a commercial real estate person, but I can imagine the list of who's interested in that space gets smaller and smaller. So I would feel very interested in knowing what the process would be to be sure there's still enough people interested in that commercial space to have it be viable. Or to consider expanding it, or getting rid of it and moving some of the second floor parking down to the first floor and expanding the residential on the second floor from 4 units to something higher. Again, I just invite more creativity around the commercial space and more options. So in that context, the commercial space, the question about a community amenity comes up in a couple of different directions here. And like Commissioner Riggs, I sort of thought about, well, what does it mean to be community serving in this neighborhood? There are 2 developments which are next door, essentially, the Aton and the Ilan, both of which have more units, but not nearly the density. This project is more than 3 to 3x the density of either of those, although it's a smaller number of units. And neither of them has, at least as far as their websites say, they don't really have they don't have public coffee shops. They have, I think there's a reference to grab and go vending machines and like a bar. So I really questioned whether or not local retail would even be viable there, even if it were supporting all 3 of those residential communities. That's what I would think would be my first choice in terms of use of that space, some kind of a small food service type of setting. But I'm not sure that qualifies as a community, I don't know, a community amenity or versus being just a commercial use of that space. My next line of thinking about what constitutes a community amenity for that space would be about access. We've talked about traffic, we've talked about the proximity to Redwood City, and the community amenities list does include some references to more transportation. There's a shuttle line that runs in that neighborhood. So, thought, okay, well, does increasing the frequency of the shuttle line that runs out to that neighborhood constitute a potential community amenity to be considered? So these lines of thinking actually brought me to a question that I would like to pose to, I'm not sure if it's the applicant or staff, which is that as community amenity process proceeds and the calculation of what the value of that community amenity would be, is that going to be based on bonus density for the city's bonus density, or does it include the state? Because I think the published list of community amenities, just for purposes of public awareness and thinking this through, has some numbers against it. So I think it would be helpful to this commission and to members of the public to understand the magnitude that this project could represent in terms of that list of amenities. So we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so that exact formulation is still being worked out. The city's past practice has been to look at the entirety of the project, inclusive of bonus development, whether that's allowed under a local program or a state program. As you point out, the magnitude here is quite large. And so the applicant has questioned that methodology and whether that's consistent with the state density bonus requirements. So that's something that we are examining, and the final methodology is still to be determined. So that final assessment is not set at this time.
Okay, thank you. So just based on past knowledge and a guesstimate, we're talking about low millions, single digit millions here in terms of the community amenities. And when you think about that list, I was thinking about that list and also thinking about the parameters that were laid out in the staff report, which is that it would be, the community amenities would be fulfilled without incremental development. So on-site and without incremental development or through the in lieu fees. And what I went back to is, okay, if we're going to do it on-site, we probably need more space for it, right? And then that took me back to the thinking about the commercial space. So I do not have a clear solution, but those two things are very definitely intertwined in my mind. And so again, I go back to the what else could be done to expand that commercial space and or commercial space that could fulfill the community amenities requirement.
And through the chair, may I just offer one more point for your consideration? Is another on-site amenity option that would be consistent with the list could be additional affordable housing, for example, an increased percentage. So that's another on-site amenity that would be consistent with the program being looked at in the EIR. That it's up to the applicant. They haven't proposed that yet, but just another variation on ways to program that space and increase options for the amenity without necessarily changing the program of what they've proposed so far.
Thank you for highlighting that. I think that's a very valid proposal and potentially has intersection with a couple of the other things that have been discussed here, including, if there were no commercial space and there were incremental residential space, could that be, in one of the affordable tiers provided as the community amenity? So I think there are a couple of different directions in which this very solid and very admirable project could be stretched to just get it even more refined and to hit that community amenity target. And now my screen has gone dark because I have talked for so long and I can't even check my notes to see if I've covered everything. Hang on. I will turn it back to other commissioners while I just quickly review and be sure I nailed it all. Take your time, Vice Chair. Commissioner Farrick.
Thanks, and mine are pretty brief. People have well covered it, fellow commissioners. My comments are really a little bit more architectural comments. One is that roof deck, I think, I just want to kind of verify that I'm understanding, sorry, there you are, that it would be able to view both the sunrise and the sunset based on its orientation. Because I know when you are at Bayfront Park and you're looking that direction, it's a really nice sunset. I don't get up early enough for the sunrise, but I assume it's on the other side. Is that the orientation? Great. And then I just thought that was a nice, I think it'll draw more people in. And I think a lot of the comments, a lot of the thread that I've heard from other commissioners and I had noted too is to make, we want this to be a place that's really welcoming and draws people in. And with that, I agree with the massing, I really like the kind of overall shape and the form, but very much agree that the east view from Haven with that big wall that's maybe there for years and years might need some work. And then the only thing I would say, the materials look nice, but it feels cold. And so I would agree with Commissioner Riggs' comment about more of that warm wood, even though I know it's wood-like paneling. It definitely brings a warmth, and I'm sure you've all seen the beautiful images of those buildings with all the plants and all of that. But, that sort of concept would make it a lot more inviting. I feel like a lot of these bigger, dense apartment buildings have kind of a coldness to them. And so I just kind of want to have this be a special one so that it's one of these kind of destination places. Lastly, I appreciated the Commissioner Schindler's comments around, or kind of grappling with parking and retail, and how that all might fit together. And being that it's unbundled, I wonder if there might be a solution of, dedicating some of the in the garage parking to the retail environment, not for overnight parking, so that there could be something that's viable there, and then reduce the parking requirement on the project itself somehow, just as a thought that might help. And then one last question. I heard that, I heard you when you said you couldn't have cars stop or park along what would be considered the front. So would the passenger pickup and drop-off zone be on the side where the elevator shafts are? It looks like there's a little cutout where there's sort of I'll look, mine also did that. Yeah, hold on. It looks like it's on the south side. Like, I see a curb cut and a stairway out on the street level with kind of a tower that looks like it might be elevated. Maybe it's not the elevators.
Yeah, if I could respond to that.
Yes.
Yeah, so the primary pedestrian entrance is along Haven South. So
Okay.
the main access point would be there, leading to 2 elevator cores and a stair.
So, but then is that where cars aren't able to pick up and drop off, or just not park?
There's no parking provided in that area. I believe it could be used for passenger drop-off. The intent initially was conceived to deal with our trash pickup of the site.
Oh, so there's not even like a pull-in, like for ride shares and friends picking up friends?
If I may, through the chair, I'd like to note that the curb cut that is shown for Haven Avenue South is actually for trash pickup. The city is also proposing a buffered bike lane along there sometime in the future. So it is not a viable spot for any sort of pickup and drop off other than the trash that has been mentioned by the applicant and worked out with Recology and the city's different divisions.
So how would that, I'm concerned about the functionality of that. I guess I'll leave it there.
I had a follow-up question to Commissioner Farrick. This is not deep stuff like what Vice Chair Schindler is considering. It's about the color and the coldness of the gray, and Commissioner Riggs's affinity for the wood. And it's a little cheesy, but I was wondering if, being near water, you have that tile panel, and I'm assuming that tile panel is expensive. You don't want to use that, but picking up on maybe those colors, the teal and the blue. As blue is a cool color, but in a way it's maybe more animated than grays, and maybe not so much to offend the birds and be too loud. But I forgot to mention that the blues and the tile panel kind of did stick out to me as very nice.
Let's see. I will briefly respond to something that popped into my head when Commissioner Farrick was just asking very good questions about pickups, drop-offs, rideshare, which are all great alternatives to car ownership and parking conundrums. It doesn't sound like there is a clear answer, and I suspect that this is already underway by the applicant, but conversations and collaboration with the the two developments further up Haven, Anton and Elon, may yield either collaborations and joint and shared resources, maybe. I mean, be generous and neighborly, but perhaps not economic, but it might just be interesting, and I would be curious to investigate that direction. It also has occurred to me as I've listened to the commission's discussions that members of the public who are still listening may have questions and be potentially not have the full context of the waivers and concessions that we're talking about here. And I think I will sort of give my understanding, and please look to staff and council and the applicant to correct this. But my understanding is that under SB 330, the concessions and waivers that are being requested here are given and are requested in order to provide the density that comes with this project. And they are presumed to be requirements of hitting that density, that level of density. And that is the origin of the waivers and the concessions. And it's not a question of are they or aren't they. They're requested and they are granted. And it's not necessarily a question for open debate here in this forum. So now I will look to staff and council to confirm or potentially refine that, so that the public is clear about what's going about the nature of this part of the dialogue.
Thank you. Yes, and so the broad strokes of what you presented were correct. A couple of just minor clarifications is that although SB 330 constrains some of the city's discretion more generally, the specific law is the state density bonus law. It's a different provision of the government code that they're invoking. And it does, concessions are related to modifications of development incentives that would reduce the development cost to help with providing for affordable housing. And waivers address physical development standards that, as you pointed out, are related to achieving the density. And there's a series of Court of Appeal cases that basically presume that projects that have affordable housing sufficient to qualify for a density bonus are entitled to the concessions or waivers that they request, unless very specific conditions are met. If they violate federal or state law, for example, or if there were to be a specific adverse impact on health and safety that could not be mitigated because of the granting of that waiver, that could potentially be a basis for denial. But otherwise, there is not much latitude to modify or debate or turn down concession and incentive and waiver requests.
Thank you for refining and clarifying. Yeah, I think that was just sort of, in listening to the dialogue, felt like that was relevant to incorporate into and to share with anybody who's still listening. Absolutely. Commissioner Eric.
I just want to make one final quick comment. As usual, I am impressed with the comments of my more architecturally refined colleagues. So I second all of those. I did realize that when I was making my comments, I didn't convey my overall point, which is just my level of excitement and admiration for this project. And I hope, well, we're not making a motion tonight, but I hope that you walk away encouraged and that we continue to work with all due haste to make this a reality. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Eric. Well, feel free to add any closing thoughts, but I think across the commission, we've all expressed some opinions and feedback on architecture design, site design, and meatier things that I'm right now can't find the words for them. Equitable, living cost and density and making a commercial, contributing to neighborhood serving retail in this area. So if no one has any further comments or there's no further areas that we missed, I think we can go ahead and move on from this item. Thank you so much for your time and to staff and the applicant team for your time and presentation. And I believe that takes us to item H1. H, regular business, we have one item, H1, and that is to review the draft 2024 Planning Commission meeting dates and Planning Commission start time. This is not a CEQA project. And I believe I am turning to Mr. Parada for this one.
Yes, thank you again, Chair Doe and members of the commission. So before the commission this evening is a review of the 2024 Planning Commission meeting schedule. And as well, we added as part of this item a opportunity for the Planning Commission to provide either individually or through a motion any feedback to staff on the meeting start time and for staff to consider and work with the city clerk to bring to the city council as part of a broader update in the future. There's no identified date as made clear in the staff report, but staff could, if the commission was interested in reviewing its start time, bring forward that statement to the council as part of a broader update in the future for the council's policy for commissions and advisory bodies. One other update, though, with regard to the calendar. So staff was made aware that the first meeting in April 8th, that we're recommending falls within the Menlo Park City School District's spring break. I did note and looked back and reviewed the council's adopted calendar, and the council did move its potential April 9th meeting to April 2nd to avoid that week. And so I wanted to flag that for the commission this evening if there was any guidance or input. But staff's not modifying or recommending to change its calendar at this moment, but we'll take direction from the Planning Commission. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Doe.
Does anyone have any specific feedback, calendar or start time? Commissioner Eric?
I do have some comments on the start time, and I'll just caveat this by saying I find this to be a little bit awkward because really what we should be doing here is serving the community. I do have some comments about start time that are related to my own schedule. It is my understanding, though, that the current relatively late start time of this committee, this may not be right, but it's my understanding that in part it was because of the desire of commissioners past and present who had young kids to start a little bit later. I currently have young kids, and it would be very difficult for me to start at 6 o'clock. If we wanted to consider moving up to 6:30, that works, and I'm open to that. But I did just want to throw that out there in the interest of transparency.
Thank you for sharing that. Commissioner Farrick?
Sure. I just wanted to note it was actually Commissioner Barnes that requested the revisit, and he's unfortunately not here. I actually am agnostic. I would like to go to bed before 10, but
Yes,
that's my only thing.
And for people with small children wake up early, so
Right.
it hurts on both ends.
The one comment I'd make that, thank you for very nicely reminding us that who we're here to serve, is that I do worry that we have not had this in the last several months, so it's not a chronic issue that we're experiencing. But in the longer history, there would be hearings that would go until like midnight, 1 a.m, that would be not very fair to the public either. And so, that's all. I hate to be completely inconclusive here, but I will be here at 7 or at 6:30 or at 6. That's it.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
I am fortunate in having similar flexibility as Commissioner Farrick, but I have been, as many of us have, in Commissioner Eric's position. So I get it. I will be here whether it's 6 or 6:30 or 7. I would also like to go to bed earlier, and I respect the position about serving the public, but I'm here and I can make it work either way. I have the flexibility and that's it. And I would be in favor of moving the April 8th meeting. I don't have a strong preference for whether we move it a week up to April Fool's Day, the 1st, or whether, for example, we bounce it down to the 22nd or even the 29th. I don't know if one of those is more viable than the other, but I would probably miss the April 8th meeting as a result of it happening during a school break. Commissioner Eric.
Yeah, I guess to continue the somewhat awkward public calendaring, if we're moving the April 8th meeting and there's an option to move it up to the 1st or back to a later date, I would have a slight preference to move it back to a later date, only because the preschool that both my children attend has spring break the first week of April rather than the second week. But that should not be a driving consideration. But we're here discussing it, so I'm bringing it up.
Commissioner Riggs.
Yeah, I'm really curious whether when preschoolers take spring break, do they go to Florida or Las Vegas?
Whichever serves better graham crackers.
That's right. I'll invite my 4-year-old next time. He can comment.
The only comment I haven't heard tonight is that getting to a meeting that starts before 7 is just more challenging. Yeah, it's a traffic issue. The best solution to avoiding meetings that go to 1 o'clock is to reduce the agenda, but that's someone else's issue.
Great, and I guess I'll go ahead. Oh,
Oh.
Commissioner Farrick. Well, I was
Oh,
just
no,
about
no,
to say,
yeah.
I'm also like Commissioner Farrick, agnostic. You could be, escaping time away from your kids, or you want to see them to bed. So could go either way. So yes, I'm happy to be here. Commissioner Farrick.
I just hadn't commented on the calendar piece, so I'm happy to be flexible on the April date. So, it sounds like the 22nd would work better. Removing the 8th and adding the 22nd is something I guess we could collectively say, let's propose that.
Is there any, would that work from
So
staff point of view?
through the chair, before I answer that, Mr. Pruder just came over to remind me that I neglected to mention we should take public comment on this item. So if we could maybe pause the discussion and open up to public comment for presumably remote attendees.
That's another roadblock to meetings that end before 10 is who's running this meeting. Mr. Pruder, can we take public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair Doe. I do love my public comments. So quickly, I am looking and I don't see any hands raised, but as a reminder, folks on Zoom can raise their hand or press *9 if they're on their phone. And we have no members of the public inside the council chambers at this moment. Happy to wait a moment just to confirm that. Thank you.
Please.
You want to get from Bellhaven over to here at 7 o'clock, before 7.
Any commenters now?
We still have no hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll close public comment. Commissioner Eric.
I guess in all seriousness, it does, Commissioner Farrick is right that I think the person who brought this up was Commissioner Barnes, who is not here. So not to draw this out further, but I guess a question for the commission and maybe for staff is, does it make sense to continue this item to another meeting when Commissioner Barnes is here, on the chance that we did want, I don't know that we would feel comfortable, maybe we would, making a motion tonight if we wanted to move the meeting time. But if we wanted to do that, I think we would have to continue the item or bring it up again.
Yeah, so through the chair, so it's one agenda item, there's 2 components. Staff does need input from the commission this evening on the calendar. We will need to publish that this week. with regard to the meeting start time, we felt that coupling that with the calendar was a good opportunity to discuss it. We can certainly, the planning commission does not need to make any motion on that or recommendation tonight. We can certainly take feedback this evening, and we could take feedback that says to bring it back at a future meeting when the full members of the commission are here, potentially including the 7th member appointed to fill prior Commissioner Harris's seat. We can certainly revisit that in the future. As mentioned in the staff report and in staff's opening remarks, we're looking for input if desired by the planning commission. There's no immediate action on any start time. That there's no timeline either to bring back any review of the commission policy with the council. So we can certainly, move forward that direction if it's the commission's direction.
I think that's a good suggestion from Commissioner Eric, seeing that the time would have just been a recommendation only to city council, and but on the calendar, I feel like we've all had a chance to express that with the school breaks being on the 1st and 8th, the 22nd is preferred. And actually, Commissioner Riggs, did you have a preference for that? So I think on the calendar, it sounds like the commission is ready to make a motion to approve with the recommendation of just changing the April 8th to the 22nd.
So moved.
Okay, so I think that was a first. Or
Second.
the first from Commissioner Eric and a second from, first from Commissioner Farrick, second from,
It's late.
it is, it's after 10, and a second from Vice Chair Schindler, and then let's vote on this.
If I may, Chair Doe, can I chime in for a minute here on the recommendation for the 22nd? If the commission would potentially provide staff the flexibility to move it to the 1st or the 22nd, understanding that neither day is going to work for all commissioners. I think the key this evening is there a quorum issue on either day? I would like to review that date further. I know the city council opted to have its meetings on the 2nd and the 9th to avoid the 23rd. And so there could be a constraint there for the planning commission on the 22nd, and I'd like to look into that further. And I'll make the note that if you look at the council staff report, the reason why is that Passover begins on the 23rd, and so there could be a conflict there as well with the 22nd and meeting prep and scheduling. So I'd like to kind of look at that further if the planning commission could give staff that flexibility to look at either the 1st or the 22nd, and we can update accordingly. I think it sounds like the 22nd could work for all the commissioners present, and the 1st not for every commissioner, but perhaps the majority, a quorum. Does that help?
That is helpful. I can only speak for myself, but that flexibility of either the 1st or the 1st or 2nd, I would, that works for me. I'm sorry, 1st or 22nd. And it just the 1st is that doesn't work for Commissioner Eric.
But that you should have the flexibility. That's fine.
And not hearing from other commissioners, seeing nods, I think you have the input you need on that.
Yes, sorry. Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, and is the maker and seconder of the motion okay with that flexibility of 1st or 22nd for April? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Eric,
Yes.
Commissioner Farrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Riggs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Schindler.
Yes.
I am also a yes, and the motion passes with 5 votes and 1 absent. And I think we get to informational items. Mr. Parada?
Yes, thank you. So with the input from the Plan Commission just now on the January or the 2024 calendar, which would include the January date. So we are looking at January 8th as the first meeting. We're currently working on a number of items. The notice will not be sent till later this week, so none of these are confirmed, but we are looking at potentially some proposed revisions to the Hotel Moxie hotel project on Haven Avenue nearby the 3705 Haven Avenue project, as well as single-family home. And we are targeting in the near future. I cannot commit that it will be on the January 8th meeting, but we are looking at some other housing element zoning cleanups that we'll be working on throughout the early part of next year. And so it could go as early as January for some of those cleanup items that have been identified through the final adoption process of those zoning changes. And with that, that concludes my reports and announcements. Staff's available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I know that I've seen this, I just can't remember it on instant recall. What is the date by which HCD gives us feedback?
We anticipate feedback in the very near future. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but we are hopeful that we'll get feedback before the end of December. So formal feedback at some point this month would be possible, given when we turned in our most recent version or draft of the housing element. I'm happy to follow up Vice Chair Schindler separately with the actual date and as well to the whole commission.
Thank you. I know it's been published someplace. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. I remember thinking it was before New Year's. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, staff will follow up with the commission. We can certainly provide that as a one-way communication email to the commission after the meeting this week.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Great. No other questions? This meeting is adjourned. Have a restful holiday, everyone. Thank you.